Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today it's time for the Week 10 Power Rankings for the 2025 UFL season. We have just one more week of regular season football left for 2025, which is really sucks to say, but it is true. Now, this past week was sadly a week that really didn't matter for anything, of course, because yes, the number one seeds are technically still up for grabs, but we already know who has the home field advantage because of stadium issues. But there still were 4 games played, and there were a couple of upsets. So let's just get right into it with number 8, the Brahmas. Look, I'm not gonna act like there's anything else to really be said about this team. This might be a shorter Power Rankings video because of some of these lower end teams, but like the Brahmas, what more can I say about them? They tried to go back to Kellen Mond and it didn't work. The team still got just absolutely crushed. It was another really bad week for the Brahmas. Not a close game. He was fully outplayed. It was just a rough one. I mean, they got destroyed by the Battlehawks. Look, I expected the Battlehawks would win that game by like 9 points. That was my prediction. I didn't think they would just absolutely crush them. I mean, this is another one of those really terrible losses for the Brahmas to add onto that pile. Like their back-to-back weeks against the Stallions and Roughnecks, like their first 2 games. They're dead last in points allowed at 201. And their point differential is on pace to be the worst in the ultramodern era of spring football, which, when you're talking about teams like the 2023 Guardians or the 2022 Maulers, and you're going to be worse than them in point differential, that's not good. I mean, this team, there's almost nothing positive about them. The third down percentage is terrible. It literally is just a matter of, do you think Peyton Pardee is a good enough interim head coach to justify being the full-time head coach? Because, again, I don't think going back to Wade is going to be a great idea. This is just an awful team, number 8, the Brahmas. Now, their Week 10 goal, which is what this week's secondary thing is finding out if you have a QB for next year. It's as simple as that. Look, you played Kellen Mond a lot this year. Maybe try playing Bowman, the guy you recently just signed. I believe they're the ones who just signed him. Play him. Maybe Garantano, even though we already know the answer is Jared Garantano. Or maybe even play Kevin Hogan again. The fact is, none of the quarterbacks you've played this year have looked even remotely good. Try to find one that might actually look somewhat competent and bring him back next year. Because if you're anyone in this offensive staff, at this point in the season, you have no reason to bring back Kellen Mond whatsoever. Kevin Hogan, you actually do as a backup, considering the fact that if you eliminate his last start, the rest of the games he played, he actually looked pretty solid. So at least he's given you a few good games. Whereas Kellen Mond, his best games were just average games. But Garantano, I don't know. I would be really disappointed if they start Hogan or Mond in this game, honestly. Especially Mond. They should start somebody else in Week 10. We'll see what they do, but their Week 10 goal is to find out if they have a quarterback. And number 7 is going to be the Memphis Showboats. Again, no reason for them to move. They also lost this week. They lost, of course, to the Renegades. And very similar story, right? Offensively, they're one of the worst teams in the league, yards per game wise, second to worst. Turnover differential. It was looking a little up, but then the Renegades game happened and it went back down. Right? Minus 11 in the turnover differential. That's over twice as bad, almost 3 times as bad as the second to worst team in the Stallions. They have the worst third down percentage. It's why they can't score enough points. Right? In terms of actual points scored this season, they're almost last. They're just 9 points ahead of the Brahmas, which of course is really bad. And yes, their point differential isn't nearly as bad as the Brahmas, hence why they're number 7, as well as them beating them in that Tank Bowl. It's another team where we just know the issue, right? Dresser Wynn is expected to start, we'll talk about that in a second. But the last few weeks, it's more of the same. We know this team isn't great. We know it's another bad year for them. Hate to see it from Memphis, along with all the other issues Memphis is bringing with this market. But the Showboats at number 7, really not much to say. Again, a lot of the same issues. But their Week 10 goal is the same as the Brahmas. Find out if you have a quarterback. That's been the whole plan the last 2 weeks, right? Dresser Wynn played a little bit in this game. E.J. Perry played most of it. And Dresser Wynn is expected to start in Week 10. This was back before Week 8 started, where James Larson put out that each quarterback's going to get playing time. This is to see if they work with his own offense, because of the fact that when he joined the team, it was a little bit mid-season. He didn't get full time with the 2 original quarterbacks, Perry and Williams. This week is to find out, is there any of these 3 quarterbacks that is worth bringing back next year? This is the biggest issue I said before the season. Now, this is, of course, before they signed Dresser Wynn. But I said the biggest issue with this team is the quarterbacks that they had on their roster were guys we already know their ceiling, which was not a championship caliber quarterback. Wouldn't you guess it? The two guys that returned really weren't all that incredible. Now, yes, there were flashes of T. Will being great, and there was flashes of E.J. Perry being that 2023 Week 10 Panther self, but hasn't been great. And Dresser win, it's one of those things where it's kind of like Nolan Henderson last year, where, yes, Nolan Henderson was legitimately good last year, but the fact is he played after guys like Reed Sinnett and Jared Garantano, where it made him look even better. Wynn had kind of a similar thing happen. He hasn't been all that incredible either this year, but if you're going to bring back one of these quarterbacks, I would bring back Wynn. We'll see what they do. We'll see what happens in Week 10, but that's their goal is also to find out a quarterback for next year. Now, number 6 is going to be the Roughnecks. No change for them. Yes, I know they beat the Defenders. It's a more impressive win than the Showboats. But the honest truth is this was another one of those games that was really easy to call. I said in the Game Picks video, I said the Roughnecks matched up really well against DC. It's important to know that DC basically played all their starters the whole game. Yes, there were a couple of guys, pretty much like just Teamu, who didn't play in the second half. But even in the first half, the Roughnecks were better than them, right? The Roughnecks were just the better team. And even if they're both fully trying at full strength, out of 10 matchups, the Roughnecks probably win 7 of them. And that's just because it's a really bad matchup for DC. I said it in the Game Picks video. One team is really strong on the back end on defense. One team relies on going deep every play. So if you're going against a team that has a great back end, like the Roughnecks, it's going to hurt your offense. The Defenders have no ground game. The Roughnecks, doesn't matter how their team is on the ground or that because they already have the advantage there. Then when it comes to their efficiency, Jalen McClendon is an efficient quarterback. Guess what? He had a very solid day dicing him up. If it wasn't for that terrible call to have a quarterback run in the end of the fourth quarter, the Roughnecks would have easily won this game by even more than the final score indicates. The Roughnecks were clearly the better team, and this was a bad matchup for DC. So I'm not going to reward Houston for doing what was expected of them. Now, you can punish DC more because DC still lost to a team that they shouldn't have lost to, but in an overall scheme sense, this was an easy win for the Roughnecks. Yes, their turnover differential is solid at +4. It is one higher than the Renegades. But why are they not higher than the Renegades on the overall rankings? Their defense. This is one of the bottom 3 defenses. You've basically got your top 2 defenses, or really your top 3 arguably, your next couple, and your bottom 3 defenses. This is one of the bottom 3. Yards per game, they are barely escaping the Brahmins for that last spot by 0.3, but they have a really poor defense and an overall sense of yards allowed per game. But again, the last couple of weeks they've been getting better because they've been getting healthier. Number 6, the Roughnecks, I can't really move them up for what they did, especially because the Renegades did also win, and they did a very convincing win over the Showboats. So number 6, Houston. Now their Week 10 goal is make sure it's CJ's last game. Worst thing that could happen to this team is they win this game in Week 10 against the Panthers, and then it's like, oh, well, they finished 5-5 again. You know, second time CJ did. Maybe he's not that bad a head coach, and he sticks around. You can't have that happen. You got to have the Roughnecks lose this game pretty much, because another win justifiably allows you to keep Curtis Johnson. Yes, I know some will say it's wild to say that, but think about it. If they win this game, it means that in his 3 years as the coach, he went 5-5 twice. Hey, that's better than a lot of other coaches have done. I mean, Bob Stoops has never done that in this era of spring football. His best he's finished with 4-6. Now, yes, they won the championship that year, but still, Mike Nolan finished 4-6 his first year. So if CJ goes 5-5 again, there's a good chance he stays, despite the fact that a lot of issues on this team fall on him and the coaching staff. You got to lose this game if you're Roughnecks. Man, if you win this one, it's going to be really tough to guarantee that Curtis Johnson doesn't return next year. Because if he comes back, it's going to hurt your team. Like, let's just call it like it is, right? The fact that he didn't change the coaching staff at all and just added Tom Cable really showed that this team has a lot of issues, because that means that the roster overhaul, yet the team still wasn't able to win big games. It does show that this is on coaching, not roster construction, not the GM, not even the players. Because if you have 2 fully separate rosters and neither of them really succeed, but there's one common denominator of the coaching staff, kind of know whose fault it is. Number 5, the Renegades. Not much to say here either. The Renegades, they didn't do anything that even remotely justify moving up, and they didn't do anything bad to move down. They just destroyed the Showboats, but the season still remains, right? It's still a season of blown opportunities. Blown game against Seattle, blown game against DC, St. Louis, blown game against Birmingham, blown game against Michigan, blown game against DC. All their losses were self-inflicted. They choked all those games. Look, your defense on a stat-wise is still an incredible unit. But there's just not much to say for Arlington. The team in a lot of offensive categories and other categories are kind of middle of the road and everything. They're just a team that when it gets down to mattering, they just choke. They fizzle away. Like, congrats, you beat a Showboats team in a game that was literally meaningless. Is that really impressive? No. So it's another poor win. Again, you look at their wins. The St. Louis one, massive asterisk for how you scored points in that game. Your other 3 games were a game you nearly choked away against Houston and then beating the Brahmas and the Showboats. Is that impressive? Not at all. They could finish 5-5 considering they have the Brahmas in Week 10, but even if they do, it'll be their first time finishing 5-5, which, who cares? Now, their Week 10 goal is to play Luke Lennon or Holton Allers. Perez is a spring football legend. But unless you know, guaranteed that he's returning in 2026, and even then I know some Renegades fans would very much question that, you have to play one of these 2 guys. You've got to get some actual game time in for these other quarterbacks. Right? If they don't even see the field, there's a much better chance of them taking, let's say, a college job like a Lindsey Scott. There's a much higher chance of them retiring or doing something else. If you're a QB, you need to play. You've got to get these guys some actual action. Why would an NFL team sign a guy like Luke Lennon if he didn't even get a snap in the UFL? They're not. You need to let one of these guys start and play this game. Holton Allers is coming for a couple of plays. He's made some touchdowns. Let him play a game. Let Lennon play a game. Let somebody else play. This is very reminiscent of the Defenders last year where they should have had McClendon fully start Week 10. They didn't. And then guess what? McClendon ended up having a great season with the Roughnecks this year. And Teamu only looked better because the system is designed for him to look good. Play a different quarterback. Let the team see what they have in them. Understand what works, what doesn't work for next year. Because at this point, you're going to have to bring these quarterbacks back anyway. There's just no way you can play them in one game and say, oh, they're not our guy. But you got to play them to figure out what they really work well with and what they don't work well with. We'll see if the Renegades do that. Now, number 4 is the Roughnecks, or the Defenders, my bad. You lost to Houston. I tried saying this for the past few weeks. This team's defense is just not a good unit. And they proved it again. Yes, they have great players. Malik Fisher, Joe Wallace. But as an actual unit, they're objectively bad. We've already talked about their defense. They're in the bottom 2 units in the league. Yards per game and turnover differential, they're best in the league. But the turnover differential got a bit worse after Houston. Looking at them overall, point differential, the 4 teams in the playoffs, they are by far the worst. And that is a damning statement about this team. Because 3 of them are 6-3. So you should not be almost 40 points less than the second to worst team in point differential. That shows your team has an issue, and that defense is an issue. It allows so many points, it's absurd. Yes, points scored is really solid. Almost as much as the Battlehawks, literally just by 1, and it is better than Birmingham. But they're allowing way too many points. See, Birmingham and St. Louis don't need great offenses because their defenses are incredible. DC, their entire system is throw it deep. Their ground game is still incredibly weak. It's just, they keep saying, oh, this guy's looking good, this guy's looking good between Jackson and Smith. Let's call it like it is. It's been a bad unit all year, and it still is a bad unit. So this team is just F it, go deep. You played a team that matched up horribly for you. A team that makes smart decisions. Well, let me not say team, but a quarterback who usually makes the better read. That's why I finished with a very high completion percentage, Jalen McClendon. And again, if it wasn't for the terrible play call and then McClendon fumbling the ball, the Roughnecks win this game by about 12 points because DC might not have ended up scoring because of the fact that it would have been a different type of game at that point. Houston beat you. This wasn't a matter of starters or not. No, this is Houston beat you and kind of exposed a lot of your issues. So what is their Week 10 goal then? It's to fix that damn defense. The ground game is a lost cause. At this point in the season, there's no fixing that. They haven't even given you bursts or snippets of it being a good unit. The defense at least has pieces. You have had those first couple of weeks looking good. You have had Malik Fisher and Joe Wallace have incredible weeks. It needs to get fixed. Week 10, that's your goal. Your offense, it is what it is. There's no fully changing it or fixing it. It is just F it, go deep, pray Teamu is accurate that day, and pray your ground game is just not super ass and is just ass. That's all you can do for the offense. The defense, you got to figure out something in this Battlehawks game to give you at least some sort of edge. Figure out what it is that Arlington was able to do so well against the D-line or the O-line of St. Louis to get all that pressure. Because outside of those 2 Arlington games, Duggan has not been pressured nearly as much the rest of the season. So figure out what Arlington did, because you have talent as well. Again, the 2 guys I keep mentioning are pass rushers. So we'll see if they can fix it. But if they can't, man, they're a first-round exit. But if they can get this defense back to looking like even like week 3 form, where it was just very snippets of the defense not being as good, just has to get good, right? You have to somehow make this defense work against St. Louis, because if you don't, man, you're getting killed in round 1. Number 3 is the Panthers. I know some of you are going to say, oh, but Bryce Perkins didn't play. Oh, but certain guys were still hurt. Oh, but, it was a 2-point loss to the Stallions. What it comes down to is St. Louis won, Michigan didn't. St. Louis is moving up. And when it comes to Birmingham versus Michigan, you're 0-7. I mean, seriously, I'm not going to justify putting you above Birmingham. Yes, I thought this was the best thing for Michigan. I think that if Michigan wants to win the playoffs, they needed to lose this game. If they won this game, I think there was no chance of being in the playoffs. Yes, you're number 1 third down percentage and yards per game. Or yards per game, you're second. But again, defense, you're middle of the road. You're not one of those top 2 units. Your defense is distant third on both ends, right? You're clearly better than DC, and you're clearly worse than Birmingham and St. Louis. Is part of that injury related? Sure. Gidna's not coming back this season, obviously, because the injury. Speaks played limited snaps this past week. But overall, number 3 is Michigan. Yes, Danny Etling was able to make this a very close game against Birmingham. That's a big deal. But you still did lose, and it's still 0-7. You had a chance to win the game, and you couldn't get it done. It's hard for me to look at this team and say that they should still be number 1 or even number 2 after losing again to Birmingham. Like, at some point, you got to just beat them. Number 3, again, defense wins championships. I trust the 2 defenses ahead of them more. Number 3, Michigan. Their Week 10 goal is to play some of these hurt guys. Speaks needs to get snaps, Perkins needs snaps, and Colburn needs snaps. Right? As long as Colburn is back, because he's been off IR for a bit, you've got to get him at least some playing time. I understand that you don't want to show that much, but you're not playing Birmingham, you're playing Houston. You need these guys to not be rusty. The worst thing that could happen is you head into the playoff game, and Colburn hasn't played since his injury, and Perkins hasn't played in a couple weeks, and you just say, F it, let's go out in the field. Get them some time together. Try and make this Toa Talba Matt Colburn combo work. Get Speaks more snaps, get him back to being full 100% game ready. Let Perkins play some more. Worst thing you could do is sit these guys because you don't want them to get hurt again, and then you play them in the playoff game and they're insanely rusty. That would be a terrible decision. You need to play them somewhat. These 3 guys are going to be very key in you beating Birmingham. Let them get some time on the field. It only has to be like 2 drives. Would make it like a couple of full drives. Not like a Speaks comes in, 2 snaps, rests 2, comes back in. Let him play a couple of drives, Speaks on defense, Colburn and Perkins on offense, and then rest them. Just make sure they're not rusty. Number 2, the Stallions. Turnover differential is scary. Let me just start saying that, because again, it still isn't getting better. It got a little bit worse this week. That is scary, but it's not like you're as bad as Memphis. And again, the last 6 weeks, or last 4 weeks, you've basically been stuck at -3, so you went down a bit. Points allowed, you're best in the league. Now, overall defense, like I said before, I still think St. Louis is a better unit, but you're still easily the 2nd best unit in the league. And yards per game on offense, you're one of the 4 teams over 300 yards. So, still not great there, but you're still on the higher end. You're in that tier 2, right? You got tier 1 DC, Michigan, then your tier 2 Birmingham, Arlington. So at least you're there. Look, your team didn't really do a ton to move up. You just beat Michigan again. So I think that's justifiable enough considering how many times Michigan has lost to you, being, 7 straight and 7 all time in this era. But what it comes down to is just the defense is great. The team is playoff ready. They've always been. There's a reason they're 3-time champions, and they have a very good shot at winning a 4th straight. We'll see if they get it done, but number 2, it's Birmingham. There's really not much to say. Now, their Week 10 goal is don't risk Jamar. For every other quarterback, I think they do need to play in Week 10. I think that every other quarterback in the playoffs needs to play in Week 10. Taylor doesn't matter. Like I said, that offense, you know what it is. But for the other 3, well, mainly for St. Louis and Michigan, you need your quarterbacks to play. Well, with Jamar, you can't risk him getting hurt. At this point, he's going to be your playoff starter. There's almost no argument in the world that any other quarterback on this roster should start in the playoffs because of either rust, injury concerns, or something like that, and that's why you can't play Jamar. Jamar plays and gets hurt, your team's screwed. Yes, I know you still have other guys who are coming back who are still, somewhat healthy. You know at this point in the season, Jamar's been the most consistent quarterback. There's a reason his passer rating is so much better than everybody else's. He's been the best quarterback on this team, and it's been by a pretty wide margin. You do not want him getting hurt. You already know what he has. He knows this system well. Do not risk him getting hurt. Even if it's just, if any team's going to rest their whole starters, it should be Birmingham. Every other team has at least one facet of the game where their starters need snaps. Birmingham really doesn't. So, Jamar is the most important, but honestly, borderline just rest all of them or only play them for a drive. We'll see, but that's number 2, the Stallions. Number 1 is the Battlehawks. I can't wait for people in this week's power rankings on other people, to probably post this team lower than they should be. They should be number 1. Right, they're the best record in the league. They're riding a 5-game winning streak. And the fact is their offense is starting to look better. Now, yes, we still haven't seen too many weeks where both Duggan and Sailors have looked great. But we'll get to that in a second. The point is, you're the only team with 2 losses. Every other team has more. You have the best point differential. Granted, it's by a slight margin, but you have it. And I mean, hey, you're the 1 seed right now. Win this game in Week 10, it's a 6 straight win streak, and you're heading to the playoffs with more momentum than any other team. Because it's the most important thing. This team's momentum is incredible, right? They beat Michigan. They beat the Renegades in that revenge game. And that was their first really big game in the franchise history that they won. Then the Memphis game, you beat a bad team by a decent margin. Then Birmingham, you beat another team in a big game. And the Brahmas, you crushed a team that you were expected to crush. That's impressive. So number 1 is the Battlehawks. Not much to say. This team has the best defense in the league right now, in my opinion. They have a great special teams unit. That is also arguably the best in the league, that or Birmingham. Number 1, St. Louis. Week 10 goal is build momentum for both Duggan and Sailors. We haven't seen enough of these 2 players both playing great together. You need them both to be at full strength. The biggest thing for Duggan is that he still hasn't looked incredible. He still looks like somebody who, even in the games that he scores a lot of points in, there's still issues. You got to try and get as many of those issues kind of hammered out of him as possible. And Sailors, 2 weeks ago he was great. This past week, not as good. You need him to be at full strength. You need them to both be riding momentum heading into the playoffs. If they can go into Week 10, play a couple of drives, have a couple of good ones, rest them. Basically, as soon as they have back-to-back good drives, I would rest them. Don't risk injury after that. But if they don't have any momentum heading into the playoffs, it's rough. Duggan didn't play the whole game, obviously. A lot of the starters didn't. And Brandon Silvers ended up coming in and looked really solid, which was not good for Duggan. So if you're Duggan, man, you got to get some momentum built. He looked pretty solid, not really running the ball, which is a good thing. Because, again, the biggest issue with him is his throwing motion makes him not great for running the football, despite him being an excellent runner. It is what it is. Number 1, the Battlehawks. Overall, that'll do it. This has been Zomfox. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Again, we're at the end of the season pretty much. It's just got 3 more weeks left. We still got a lot of videos coming out. This week, I'm not going to have one of those weekly videos, mainly because of how many I put out last week, though. Obviously, next week, I will have my playoff predictions video and all that. So make sure you're on the lookout for all that. Think about becoming a community member for as low as 99 cents a month, and be on the lookout for all the streams I'm doing this weekend. And as always, guys, have a great night.